Mm.
And we are
Yep,
recording.
we are.
Welcome to the evening of Python coding. Here, each month, we have a new Python library that we present. This month, Dragos Sintera has excelled. Not only he's showing a Python library, he's going to show you how to make a Python library. So, Dragos, it's your recording. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. So starting from the beginning. So usually you'll see you see. So I'll start basically from this side. You'll hear about a lot of like libraries in Python or Fast API being one of them, OpenAI, you name it, like SQL Alchemy. There's so many. Now, the question becomes is like if you want to build one yourself. So if you not necessarily like a Fast API, like a full-fledged project. However, if you think like would be a good idea to kind of like share code between yourself and colleagues, make this some things like repeatable, or build some, say for example, some wrappers that you can reuse across your projects. So the question is that instead of like copy pasting code, you might want to build something in Python which will allow you to do so. Mostly everything in Python is a module, so including a file. So if we are starting to look from the Visual Studio Code, so I'll walk you through it. It's a very simple Python library, so you can basically following this skeleton and expanding it in one way or another, and we'll see how that actually works out by showing two examples. As I mentioned, Fast API and OpenAI. You can actually build one yourself. It's not as hard as one thinks. So that's one of the beautiful features of the Python language, whereby it allows you to extend it, or it allows you to actually build things quite seamlessly. I do believe one thing in Python, it's easy to learn but hard to master. So yeah, so therefore although there is a Zen of Python, there are many ways, even in how you build your own library. So we'll go through kind of like two examples, and then we'll go back to the code base that I have, and I'll walk you through how you would potentially think of one by yourself, and expand what I have here to your own use case. So if we look basically, so what as an example, I'll have OpenAI and Fast API. So let's go first to the Fast API project structure. And that's quite important because they use different because they structure the project slightly different than OpenAI. So as I said, there is no right or wrong in how you would want to go around it. It's just you might want to follow something that is in a way like a super high level the same, and then you can choose whichever way you want to go later down the road. So if we go through the OpenAI project structure generally, so the most important part that you might want to build when you want to have your own library, you should have most likely a docs folder. That's quite an important one, which will describe you in a way what the API or what the library will do in this case. So I might say API many times because I tend to build as these things as wrappers to things that I want to reuse. So and it helps me to with the versioning of them and things like that. So one of the folder that I do like to tell is docs. The other one is tests. So you'll see basically that the compared to other languages, if you're coming from the Java side of the world, as I did in the past, the test folder, if you want to have test coverage of your framework of your library, is most of the time inside, or at least is packaged with the all together. Now in Python, this is slightly different. So you might want to, when you actually publish your library, not to include the tests. So that you can exclude specific modules out of this, and make it available without basically the test. However, if you want the test, you can clone it and run it yourself. So that allows you kind of like to minify or to minimize the amount of code that you ship over the wire, or just for simplicity, with other words. So that will be outside, and that is an interesting thing because basically when you will try to install your library in order to test it properly, the test has to be out to be outside. So it's kind of like when you look in physics inside the particle. So you have to look from outside rather than from inside the module because then everything is kind of like it will be everything will be in path. It will be found in path, and then you'll not have the weird. You'll not have the surprise later down the road where it says module not found. And usually module not found is that it won't be in any of the path that you actually will be searched in that point in time. So in order to install it, as you know, you'll do it via pip or via UV or any libraries that will allow you to to install anything in Python. However, that will be located within your own virtual environment, and that makes it available and at that point of the environment, so to the Python path, so your library will be there. Similarly, that's why tests mostly is outside rather than inside. For example, you can instead of being inside the fast API folder. Now there are a couple of things here which it's worth going through them. So one is technically requirements, and this you'll see this practice is quite interesting. So I do it myself as well. So you'll have requirements text, requirements test, requirement GitHub action, requirements docs. So what that actually this allows you to do is just to install specific requirements for the way how you want to interact with the library itself. So for example, if I don't need to install the docs requirement if I only want to run it, right? So the requirements text, if we go inside there, just as an example, you'll see that it will try to either install all, or if you want to say recursively, go to requirement tests, goes to requirement docs, and then there is this next one. So what you might think in the future is that basically if you have like development environments, so you want to have like rough or like the isort for anything like linting, and you don't want to have them installed when the library actually wants to install all these dependencies. You might want to have like requirements, the main one, like the production ones. And if you want the one to have like the development requirements, like for example, like this in docs, you will see that it has the YAML below doc strings and whatnot. So this basically allows you to structure how you want to import your requirements in different ways. How do you want to interact with your library? And I find this quite important because again, you don't pollute the namespace, the whole your environment with 10,000 libraries which you'll never use. Rather, you choose the ones that you want. So this particular requirements segregation, I pretty much like it. I do it in the libraries that I built myself, and I find it quite cool. So that's one way of doing it. So that's what I'm saying. The other side is that if we expand a bit in this case how fast API works, you'll see that basically you'll have your Python files in a format that is not really defined in any shape or form. So you can pretty much put anything in there. So it doesn't it does have some sort of structure when you say middleware or dependencies. So technically on one what that could be. However, this is basically kind of like a library that it follows, in my opinion, like a flat profile. So it doesn't go in too many levels of nested levels of modules. Rather, it's pretty much what you see is what you get, and basically I call it flat profile. So technically, as I said, you don't have too much of depth in the folders that they have. So this is, as I said, one way of doing it. So you can build yourself something that it has inside your module inside your library, and the following modules you'll have like docs, your own name. So as you can see, in this case is fast API. So this is one way how you will define it. In this way, I do believe the setup tools will find it without any problem. So you don't have to specify the path because it's the same name as the top level domain. Now, as I said, this is one way. So this is how fast API will do it. it does follow basically the requirements state. And it has one thing that is quite interesting. So you'll see that instead of having a setup, so you'll not see a setup here. You will see basically a Pi project TOML, which will describe pretty much the requirements of the project. So in this case, your classifications, what's the name of the project, your dependencies, specific dependencies that actually that are fundamentally required, and then it kind of like goes and tells which libraries you're using internally. Now that's one.
Dragos, why
Go ahead.
why is the duplication? You use both a toggle file and a requirements.txt file. What's the reason for having you need both? Why is this needed? Why is that needed?
That's something that I may have an answer, but it might be the correct answer. So I'll put it in the text later down the road. So one way that when you have like the pip install, pip install will go with the requirements text. If you have a Pi project, when you go to publish it to PyPy, this is what it looks into. So that was why there are two different things. So when you publish it to PyPy, so for example, if we go to where is Fast API here, so PyPy will look here. So what is the programming language? What are the topics? So it takes from the TOML representation the things that it presents and the dependencies that are shown. I have to
Thank
go
you.
back on this one. So my answer on this one is a 50-50 because usually
No. It's good. You gave an example of what's needed in the TOML file. It's when you publish it on pipeline, you want to populate this data, then it takes it from the TOML file. Thank you.
that's one. The other side is that when you have UV, so the newer project, the new packagers, they will look at this PyToml file, and it doesn't matter if you have a requirements or not. It will just go and install from there. So poetry, for example, will go to the PyToml, this one instead of requirements. So there is a bit of a, I think different installers will treat it slightly different. That's why I'm a bit old school on the requirement side rather than on. So I do specify PyProject as you'll see later in the library that I built myself. However, this is, for example, if you install UV, the new kid of the block, it just goes in PyProject and that's it. So it will fetch everything from there. So that's my a bit of my understanding on why do you need both at this point in time to support several installers. I might be wrong, slightly wrong, not fully wrong. So it's a bit of a half answer, I would say. Now, if we go back to the Open API, you'll see that these guys, they have also the Pi projects, and they have so they have will have a Knox file, and you'll see what that is as well. So and if we go into the Open API project, this follows more or less kind of like a source directory and the name of it, rather than getting the flat. So the same name of the library has the same name as the top level domain. So similarly, you'll have the scripts or the tests outside. They don't have that much of a docs because they do have a different way how they will generate the documentation of the library. We'll have the similar a similar project structure. So you'll see that basically we'll have the dependencies, the what's the library, the entry points, and everything there. They're basically described in the TOML file, and they will have pretty much requirements log and requirements devlog. So what I was mentioning earlier is that this particular library does the way how I structure as well is you have like your main library requirements, and then you have a development requirement. So basically, if you want to install it in the development mode, you only need, you'll say requirements.dev, so you can add the rest of the Python libraries that are not required by the original install. Um, So that's so that will be basically um, why would you kind of like why would you structure it differently? The other side that if we go ahead and explore a bit the library, you'll see that this one doesn't have that much of a flat structure as the previous one. So they will go a bit more into it has a bit more depth into the into itself. So so that's why that's why I call them uh, um, kind of like flat or not flat. That's I find one interesting thing that if you want to provide it later down the road is basically the CLI. So interacting via the command line with your library. So both Fast API as well as these guys, they provide a CLI to it. And I quite find it quite interesting to have this ability to do so. They will describe everything with underscores. Technically, with underscores, it's kind of like private in my mind. So I think this is something that I always when you think like how Python things are, if you're defining a method inside a class with an underscore that might be considered private. I'm not sure in their mind if they consider this as private files, so to say. So you're not really modifying them for what is worth. So that's something that I find it quite of a different way of naming files in Python, with starting with an underscore before. And as I said, in my mind, always starting with one underscore is private, and double underscore. So the Dunders ones are a bit more special. For example, like the init files or the Dunder files, whereby those are Python specific ones, and you can define your own. However, that's pretty much if you Dunder it is so double underscore. It's always a thing that as I said in my mind, it's a Python internal Python thing, or at least something that you want to treat it as such. Whereas the single underscore, I'll treat it as a private construct, so to say. Now, that's that's why I said that are two different ways. So, and you'll see that in the fast API world, you'll have only one or two files, and everything else is pretty much normally. So you'll see like a clear naming of the Python modules themselves. In the Open API one is a bit more. Let's call them. I would like to call them private. um, that's basically two ways of structuring them. So there are several others. So if you look at the Google libraries, they follow slightly a modified versions of like a mixture of both. So, but that kind of like covers how would you go around it and try to build your own. And that's what I will kind of like go into this one. So it's called My Python Library. It has nothing special in it. So it goes via the setup tools. So if you want to install it in your own virtual environment, you will do something like so if we have the new terminal. So if I have to say whatever I have in my environment, there is a lot of stuff because I installed OpenAI and Fast API. However, you will see that it's also somewhere it's Chatty, which is my library. I called it Chatty. So my Python library name is Chatty, which is defined, that's what I said earlier, in the project, in the PyProject TOML. It will pick up the name from here. So when I'll do say pip install, so if you want to install it as your own, I did it here. So I compiled it. No, this one. Well, I'll just do it. So pip install dash e dot means that you install it as the executable in your own virtual environment. So it will install the dependencies, and I installed my library. Now, what that said is that across everywhere, this will be made available outside. So for example, from main PY, which is outside technically the source of my library, I can technically import it as chat and say I said chat OpenAI, and I can call the library what I just did. It will be found in path. And this is what I said earlier. It's important if you have like this module not found thing. It's mostly 90% of the case that that thing is not in your path, so it's not your. It can be found. So if it tries to resolve from where to import it is not there. So and I do this mistake myself many times. Although I did program in Python for a while, still I do the same mistake. So technically, the library that we have here, it follows more or less the same. It's a mixture of the both. So I use a SRC module, and within your SRC you can put pretty much anything. So either it can be a flat library. In this case, is the chat library. So chat.py is nothing else than a wrapper to OpenAI. And as you can see, basically, it gives you the ability. So you might argue, yes. So if I want to choose a specific model, so if I want to choose GPT 3.5 Turbo or for O or O1 or whatever model do I want to do, I just pass it and I pass the context around it. So that makes me so in most of the cases you'll see that there is a specific. So if we go to the OpenAI, you'll see that at that point it will ask you, for example, model GPT-4o. Now I might not want to use GPT-4o, and I don't want to sometimes hard code it for that matter. I can create, for example, a class which will kind of like wrap this client, the creation of the client with my own keys. I might have different messages. I might have different OpenAI keys. In this case, literally did specifically for this demo a very rookie mistake, and I just encoded it directly into the function and one of in function body. However, this should not be the case. I might want to use a development open API environment, or I might use a production one. So all these things actually makes your code more robust and makes your own evolvability of it, because you can pass different models, you can pass different messages, and you can pass eventually different environment keys. Now that will kind of like definitely kind of not definitely to right choice of words, it will kind of like push your thinking into building this into a class rather than into a single method and just evolving it from there. So that is kind of like how you start something small and you have like an example, and then you might want to build it and make it available for different other projects that you do. So usually either you say I want to build a library for myself. So I will potentially take Jacob examples. I want to build a small library which will do genetic calculations or whatever, and then I can make it available for everybody. And say for this type of genome or whatever I do, then you can use this one, and you just calculate something about that genome as a total, like made up example. However, this is quite valid because this is what you could potentially do. In this particular case, I wanted to kind of like start it small and then kind of like walk it through and expanding it through to a bit more than that. And for example, I'm passing the message in this case, and I tell the system you're a helpful assistant, you're a message, and I tell you what the model is. So if I want to go to main.py, I'll just go load my environment keys, and then I tell use GPT-4o. How do I output all the files in a directory using Python? So if I do, am I in the main? Yep. So I can say Python main.py, and if everything runs beautifully, usually it doesn't because we are into a demo. So hopefully it does. It actually did. So it provides me some nicely formatted hopefully code from OpenAI and tells me yes, in both examples above, replace path with actual, you do your OS standard and da da da. So actually it works. So now if I say GPT 3.5 Turbo, then I can basically switch without any code modification in my library. I can run it with a different model for OpenAI, as an example. I hope yep. So this one gives me a slight different answer, not totally different, but a bit different. So that's kind of like the power of libraries. So you can argue, yes, you can build a bit more fancy function without the library. But what that kind of like gives you is that if you do need to bring that code somewhere else, then you need to kind of like copy pasta and then have this spread all over the place. That in this case, I can release this one and call it just my Python library, my chatty library, and just make it a small example how that will work. Now, as I said, it's a very basic one. However, this is food for thought in something. How do you want to structure it? Couple of examples that they are in real life that you can get inspiration from. I've seen in the GitHub repo that Jakob has, that you can actually have like 10,000 I don't know, 50, 60 libraries that you have. So you can actually go like chainlit. I've seen fast API as well, and just go pick up one of those and kind of like see how they built it, and learn how that code is actually structured. And from that one, you can actually get better at potentially at your own Python code. But most importantly, it's like if you need to build one for yourself, then you kind of like have the pointers from where to start rather than you can always Google it. There will be, that's why I said there will be like many ways of doing it. There is no I'll use the contra, and there's no orthodox way of doing it. It is rather how you think that it will fit your project structure, how your thinking will be. However, there are kind of like 4 or 5 ways of doing it. I'll show you two. Most of them fall in line with everybody else's. So the other twos are based, they're a bit more expanded, or they are mixing them together, what I just did right now. So it's your choice. And that's what I had technically for today. It's kind of like walk you guys to two of how you build a library. I know it's very simplistic, but if you start small and if you can kind of like pick kind of like this one up and just instead of using a method, use a class. Instead of using one file, instead of thing, you can add some text. Instead of that, you can add some documentation. So basically build it up yourself. It just gives you that fundamental baseline. As I said, this is not the way. It's not the Mandalorian. You know, it is generally the a way. So yeah, so I hope you found those beneficial for how you want to structure your project. As I said, I find it. I follow both of the structures. So I do have the Pi project, the TOML, as well as I do follow setup .py in the way how I do things. Again, as I said, I put here keywords AI Skynet. We had a fun discussion at the beginning. However, this is something that I find useful for my own software development. So as I said, I hope you guys found it interesting or beneficial as well for yourselves. So that's what I have as a demo for today. That's
So,
basically it.
Dragos, this is it. Thank you for explaining those things. People don't usually look at libraries. Um, you have. I was suspecting that you will show actually how you upload something like this to PyPy. Is it something that's too much to ask, or?
We could. I need to set up some small so the test PyPy. I didn't do it on this one. So if you give me I'll stop sharing for 2 seconds. So if you give me a bit of
Okay,
two
stop
minutes, I
sharing.
can show it.
We're gonna talk, and you're gonna show us how to do this. We're
That is
gonna
correct.
we're gonna do something else while you're not sharing. So stop sharing
Yep.
and do whatever is needed, and it'll be just nice. Just a
Two
nice.
seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
We can wait, guys. If you have questions, meanwhile, you can think about them. So when Dragos is ready, then you can ask them. Um, it's something actually people don't know, but like libraries, the entire Python is built out of libraries and libraries. Everything you write basically is kind of a library. Either it's a script or a library. Uh, the difference between a script and a library is basically the fact that, or a module actually in Python, is the fact that a script knows it's a script because it's under. There's also an if statement that checks whether it's called main. You do if underscore name equals the equals main, then it knows, then it executes some stuff that is scripted. Otherwise, it might load the same thing as a module. So this is just for people to know, because in Python, everything can be almost a module. You can actually force Python to load the module, the script as a module with the -m option. But uh, oh, and if you have a directory structure, you can actually go up and look up backwards to import stuff from a previous directory up the tree. But Python allows you to do this off the bat by having many files, and it's really helpful in this regard. Now, most Python libraries that you do are now hosted in something called PyPy. PYPI, and this is what Dragos is now setting up so he can show you how it looks like. Basically, he's going to install his library on this PyPy just to show you how it works. So you can, in the future, if you create your own code, then you can put it on PyPy. Usually the things on PyPy are like sophisticated software, but sometimes you find every once in a while some this or that library. You can even find some, malware there. So be careful. There were some examples of people like misspelling some famous Python library and then on PyPy and then putting all sorts of malware there. So good thing that the PyPy team has increased its security, but there were several talks about it several years ago when they were dealing with it. Every once in a while, you still find some also security issues, but usually people are good. The libraries on PyPy are usually good. These are things that I want to do. Now,
Right.
PyPy is only one place where you can install. You can also install Conda, and there's UV and some other things. But that's, I see Dragos. Dragos, you ready or
Almost ready. So I need to
okay? A few
let
moments. So
me
I'll
let
continue
me
telling you
let
about.
me try to reshare. So
Yeah, I'll
let's
continue
see if
telling
it
them
goes.
about that. Interrupt me when you're ready, and I'm just keeping the
Let's
audience engaged while you're
let
doing what you say.
let me
Um,
see if I could let's do the share. So there are a couple of things that I try to do very quickly. So one of the things that I tried to say was that for that you need two additional packages, which is basically build and twine. Okay, twine is the package, so it's not twin. So I didn't ask ChatGPT, so that's not the thing. I just needed to pick them up from one thing that I've did in the past. So let's see if we could ask ChatGPT here. How do I do it in the that would be fun. So let's do this. So we need to actually twine. So two libraries you'll be required to have them installed. So one is the build library. So that will build the tarball, and the other, the twine, will interact um, with uh, um, with PyPy as a repository. So that will go and install it. And after all this half of the internet is finished, we should be able to do one more thing, and that is basically we will ask um, to build the library itself, so that the tarball will be ready for us to. So it goes to creates an isolated environment. So that's what I said. So it has a targ zip. So it's basically an chatty. It builds the wheels and it builds the package, and that's basically it. So you'll see a new directory here, and that is your distributor directory. This is dist. So those are the files that you actually upload to PyPy. Now, that being said, is exactly what we said earlier in the, if you remember the discussions that we had with the requirements text, if in this case, everything which was in project itself and in this requirements got up, it will get packaged to be or at least the dependency of it that will be packaged here. However, not packaged as such. It will be just injected as and when you install it, it will download them and install them in your virtual environment. However, ideally, if you have many requirements, there will be also development. You don't want to have that. So that is the point where this becomes interesting, because then you don't need to release your library with all the dev installed as well. Now there is the other side. So this is the nice part. So basically, Twine upload, and I'm not sure if this will work without my username and password. Let's try to see if it does. So this will upload this to test PyPy. So there are two so before you actually upload it to PyPy itself, you can try like a dry run on test PyPy. So and then basically that will what will let's see if it does. And I don't have one. So that was basically what I wanted to get. I will stop resharing and get my API token, and I'll be back. I thought that I can do it on test without that.
That's
But
fine.
that's basically that's everything that you need to do. So at the end of the day, so there is the Twine upload is the you will have to register to PyPy.org or test PyPy, and it will give you an API token. So once you put your API token in there, you will be basically allowed to upload uh, uh, your module to PyPy, your library to PyPy. That's what it is. So actually,
Okay.
it's very simple to get it in. Uh, as Jacob says, you should be very careful. Whatever you upload or whatever you download, it might be that you get some malware programs or malware inside, so you might not want that. In your case, you should be very very careful, as Jacob said. Just one letter makes all the difference. Like twine, instead of twine e with ed, it can be n, and then you install total different package. That's it.
Yeah.
So it's quite simple to upload it to PyPy. As I said, I thought that I can get that API token bypass a test, but
Uh,
I'm not
that,
aware anymore.
that won't be necessary. It's like, unless you really wanted to complete this, then this is good enough. People can log into PyPy and get this API token themselves. It's not something that they can do. It's not
Yeah,
something necessarily for demo. I just wanted them to show the result. I wanted to show you that you show them actually how it's done, the commands and everything.
yeah. So
Anyone has questions? Can't be that you don't have questions. This is not trivial.
either I went too in too many directions, or yeah. But
No, no, no. This was good. You showed them something that they didn't know. The question is how much they absorbed and how quickly. So they'll probably have questions. Usually, you ask one question and people then start uh, on a roll. But like they're either shy or they're still digesting. Here, let me ask you a question. Maybe the will gives. Oh, here, Craig. I don't have any questions because this is a bit beyond the current level where I'm in. Okay, well, Craig, now you know how Python library works. So it's we have to start somewhere. Uh, I had to wait many years before I actually learned how to do those things, and they keep on changing, by the way. So
that's the other side. That's true.
like every few years, someone else comes up with a new Python packaging library. By the way, here I have a question. I know in Conda, make a Conda build, you have to do some other commands. What about UV? UV is the nicest, fastest installer out there. So with UV, it's very similar. It also goes on the PyPy, or does it have its own
I
like?
I only install it just for just to look at it from far away, to be honest, Jacob. So I was a bit resistant to UV. I'm not resistant as in a bad word, rather than so it's yet another, like it's written in Rust. It's more fantastic, is whatever. So I used it for the AI microspace, whereby we had this to synchronize the packages. So what I find it quite interesting for, not necessarily to build the libraries, but all to manipulate the libraries itself. So like installing them. I think it took some of the install some of the nice features, like how do you call it, like the lock of the library, kind of like what Conda does. So it just makes it a bit less. So when I was working with Conda, just like going back a bit, when it builds the environment, it to me at that point in time it felt a bit more over bloated, so to say. That's why I kind of like dropped Conda after poetry came into picture, whereby you have the ability now to make those dependencies synchronized and locked correctly. So I think that's basically where also UV shines. It makes this even a bit much faster. I did not try the library itself to publish anything. I still rely on these wheels if I really need to do something. But
Rados
I do, yeah.
and Jacob, this is Chris Cowan. Um, there's a couple videos. I don't know if you've ever seen Arjun Codes, but he did
Oh yeah, yeah.
publication of something to PyPy with poetry and GitHub Actions, and then I think he repeated it with UV. But both UV and poetry use your Pi project TOML now. So, and they have locking dependencies and all that. It's fairly straightforward. And I've seen complete automation all the way from project creation all the way to the other thing I've seen that was kind of interesting is there's somebody recently did something where you have the ability to um, run multiple versions of Python, but he used pickling somehow, so he was actually able to run a test loop with multiple versions of a library. I have to go.
Mm-mm.
I'll have to find the link, but it was very interesting. Um, I don't know. I'm totally sold on UV now. It's so much faster than everything else. It's not even worth talking about. But anyway, just thought I'd mention it. There's a couple.
No, no,
In fact, I think there's some Git. What's his name? Arjun has
Arjun, Aryan. So
yeah, however he
Aryan.
says
Yeah.
it. Uh,
Yeah.
but I wanted to add that. Sorry, I'll let you continue.
No, 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 no. It was a good in common. So I also look at them. So I'm not, as I said, I'm not against UV or something, but I think in some cases either you're a bit more opinionated or not how to do things. Um, Python generally was kind of like lets you do things however you wish, which is good or bad. In some cases, you might need more structure or less structure, depending on what you want to use it for. So I use it specifically for dependency and pin. So like the spinning of dependency management. That's what I found UV much better than poetry from that perspective. To the other side, on the project generation and things like that, you might really want to, and this is again, this is difference of philosophies. So if you want to build for example, a machine learning project, might be different structure than an API project, might be different structures than a different than let's say a utility project, and making creating a project with UV and which tries to fit everything the same. Sometimes I find this a bit. I don't. I personally don't like that part of UV, to be honest. Now, as I said, the other side of the way how it handles dependencies and how it handles the pinning of dependencies, I totally love it. So it's a bit of a like a love and hate relationship. So that's why I use it for mostly. I drop poetry in favor of UV on that one. However, on building the library side, letting projects generation, I still trust, depending on what type of project you want, you might want to structure it differently. So that's something that I'm not yet 100% on that list. My own 2 cents.
Well, it's an interesting discussion. I know Chris wanted to show UV one of these days, but perhaps we'll bring him one day to show UV, but not
I'll
these days.
I'll definitely join. Chris, go ahead.
Hey,
I'll
Yeah, for now, I'll post some links to the chat, and they can be read.
Okay. This will be helpful for the newcomers here who are interested in this. So thank you for the presentation and thank you for the discussion. Anyone has any more questions?
hey, hi, Jacob. This is Ramaguru. I have a question for Dragos.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Dragos. First of all, thank you so much for a nice presentation on this API stuff. Dragos, I'm a novice in Python. Okay, I started learning Python now for QA automation. So I just started learning Python for Selenium, right? So can you kindly suggest me a good a good place where I can where I can start, like where I can do a deep dive like kind of stuff, so that I can be best in my I mean
Rama,
yeah,
hold on with your question. Your question is relevant, but let us first finish only with the topic of making your own library. If you have something on this topic, then hold on. We'll be with you in a few minutes with this. I just want to wrap up the demo first.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
No, you're good. You're good. You are in the right place. Only wait a few more minutes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Anyone has any more questions, specifically about the demo or how to make a library and stuff like that? Questions going once? Questions going twice? Questions going 3 times? Okay. So there are no more questions. Drago, in that case, what we're going to do, don't go away, everyone. Please thank Dragos. So there are all sorts of ways to thank him. Please thank him. Make some noise if you want. And
much appreciated.
we thank you very much for your time and effort. And just to tell you that Dragos bailed me out because the presenter for this session should have been someone else. And I was looking for a replacement, and he had a busy schedule and still fit in time to actually make this available for you. So thank you very much for that. Dragos, I'm going to stop the recording. I ask that no one goes away because we're not going away yet. So I'm stopping the recording now.